All right. I believe we are live. All right. All right, someone type a comment so I can see how this thing works here. Hey, look at that. All right. What do we want to see first? Let me turn this around. All right, so I'll try and hold this still. All right, good. Everyone can hear me. Oh, good. Thank you for typing something. Okay, so we are at my home garage right now, which is very empty at the moment. But I've been tinkering with this guy on the weekends, and it is coming along quite well. Very happy with how this has turned out. So the very rough idea I had was something that was, excuse me, vaguely reminiscent of a World War II-ish paint scheme and flavor to it. So I wanted those muted greens and browns and whatnot. And it was a silver car, and I couldn't think of anything else to do with a silver car. So this is what we came up with. We did a 2-stage powder for all of this color here. It's supposed to be a black chrome. It kind of came out black chrome-ish, but I kind of like the way it looks. And then what I wanted to do, I wanted to make the cleanest engine bay I could without doing crazy stuff that couldn't be recreated or, would take 100 hours of labor. So, man, I got something in my throat. Excuse me. So I haven't gone through yet and, done all the metal work to make it one smooth piece everywhere. Really just cleaned up the engine bay. So nothing has been deleted from this car. It still has air conditioning, power steering, all of the emissions stuff is still here. Windshield washer fluid bottle, all of that still exists. We just relocated everything. So if anyone wants to know where something went, I can shove the camera down in there and show you, but we'll do a quick walk around and then we will so if anyone wants to see something in particular, just spit it out. So this is the interior. I've been playing with this the past couple days, and I'm very giddy about it because it's fun. So we went with the rev limiter. Oops. Rev limiter gauges. Focus. There we go. Kind of. And in the center area, I got some gauges that I like the looks of that kind of matched the theme I was going with there. I don't need this sort of information in this car, but it looks cool. And then, yes. Yeah, look at that. We have spent many hours in the garage here with my kids just making this go up and down. Yes, there is still a decent amount of room between it and the vents. Let's see if I can stick it back in there. And most of the air is going to come straight past it, actually. So, but I don't have to have it up once the music's going and I'm not using the GPS. I can make it disappear. So, this was a royal pain to get in. There is a lot of wires to get a radio like that in there, and it barely fits. I made my own gauge panel that doubles as a brace so that this is really solid, so it's a U-shaped piece of metal that goes back in there and supports it. Still haven't figured out what I want to put in this slot yet. We deleted all the airbags, obviously, so that button serves no function. Haven't got around to what that's going to be. Sound system wise, of course I got our speaker box in there. I got the kickers installed. There will be. I haven't cut the holes yet. Oops. I haven't cut the holes yet to put the two 6.5s in there, but they'll go. Oop, there and there. So that all fits in nicely, and I haven't decided what I'm doing with the rest of the interior yet. I have some different ideas for what I want to do, but I'm still imagining what's going on. How did you like the NB compared to the NA? As a car, I like the NB better. I've got to play extensively with all 4 variants of the Miata, and the 99 to 2000 is my favorite car. This is a 99. It is basically an NA where the engineers got to go back and fix all of the little kinks that we didn't like about the A. So the polymer that they made the dash out of doesn't crack and doesn't rattle. It's lovely. Chassis and suspension's identical. The engine doesn't have lifter tick. It's got a better flowing head. They shrunk all of the emissions pieces. The charcoal canister is substantially smaller. So this is my favorite Miata of all of the Miatas for a standard car. Once you start modifying heavily, all bets are off. It doesn't matter. For a full-out modified chassis, the A is the best because it weighs the least. And if you're changing everything about it anyway, it doesn't really matter what issues it had. So still very happy with the black car that we have that's got the blower on it. As a race car, that's a better car, but as something to drive around town and live with, I really like these guys. The washer fluid bottle is going to sit right here. Haven't got it made yet, but I've run the hose. The electrical and the plumbing is here for it. And then I'm going to make a cowl piece that covers all of this and just the cap sticking up out of the top, so that'll be completely blocked off. The coolant reservoir is under there. Can't see it, but it's under the front of the bumper there where it's out of the way. The charcoal canister is just located down there. I just dropped everything that was up here on this side of the body down. It's hanging below on that frame rail, and some of it is under this fender. You can see where I ran the wire harness. I just rewired everything, stuck it through a hole we made in the fender. It is above the fender liner inside of this fender, and it just runs down and then goes back to wherever it needed to go, so none of it is visible. There you can see it coming back out a little bit. And then same thing on this side. It was easier on this side. The fuse box hides a lot of it, but it disappears up in there. Made a rubber shroud to make sure that nothing cut or ripped the harness. And we was able to repurpose a ton of the brackets, all of that ugly bracketing. Phone's ringing. All that ugly fuel system bracketing here was able to reuse to mount a lot of the widgets. Let's see. Oh, the crankshaft shaft position sensor is run right there. So there's a hole between the back of the timing kit and the cylinder head that you can use to route the wires so they're not going in front of everything. And they tuck up and it disappears right into the harness. You never know it was there. All right. What else do we want to know? The car is still sitting on the OEM suspension. We're going to be putting it on coilovers. I'm just going to do that in the spring when we take it to the shop. It's much more fun to do that sort of work on a lift. Haven't fully reached a decision on the stripes yet. I can never decide what I want something to look like. I have to just put it together and then see if I like it or not. So I need more green back in the car somewhere. The steering wheel, someone asked me earlier, it's an NRG, very cheap. Not really planning on tracking this car, doing anything aggressive. This is just a fun drive around town, so didn't need anything super nice for there. What else? The fabric that I went with this time, I didn't want to do the quilted again because I did that on the last car. This is a weatherproof, waterproof neoprene type material, and then we just adhesived some foam to the back of it to give it some body. You can see it's all pulled in. I gotta redo how it sits in there, but it gives it something fairly soft and solid. We'll gotta iron out the wrinkles and whatnot, but this car is going to be NA. What we will probably do with this car is eventually do a high compression build. We did an all motor 99 earlier this year, where we just bump the compression up, basically pour to the head, do some valve work, bump the compression, and that was a really fun driving vehicle. It's like a stock Miata with some extra grunt low down. It was just a really fun drive around town car once you do that. It had torque at 3,000 RPM, which is a bizarre experience. No, I'm not going to do individual throttle bodies. They sound fun. Again, the purpose of this car is to just be my dream car for driving to and from work. So form leads function. Function follows form. ITBs sound phenomenal at 7,000 RPM screaming down the back straight. They are really annoying going through a drive-through. So I want to keep this car, fun and happy and something that I can take on vacation and just, enjoy it. So it'll be a very mild all-motor build. Again, going for the sensation of the drive, not really for the top-end number. We can bump up the compression a decent amount and run it on the factory computer, not even retune it. It's not aggressive. It's not making a ton more top-end power, but it's a nicer, smoother power curve. All right, someone's got to have a question here. I'm running out of monologue. No one has any questions. The only thing I look for is a car that has zero rust on it. Everything else is, relatively speaking, easily fixable. I can rebuild a motor, I can redo an interior, I can redo the suspension. Fixing quarter panel rust, it just takes all the fun out of it. I did not have to repaint this engine bay. This car is an example of a perfect car that I found for a starter project. It was cheap because it had been in an accident and had a rebuilt title, but it only had 49,000 miles on it. So it's mint, This piece you'll notice is black because the guy that bought it before me had to replace it. It looked like it had rear-ended a pickup truck hitch. So that sort of damage is easy to fix. I look under the bottom of the car. I normally go down to Tennessee, Carolinas to buy cars from down there because they're rust free. If if I can't undo the factory exhaust that's on the car with just 2 hand wrenches, it's too rusty. Everything else is easy to do. So, all right, let me go through here. Oh, yeah, all of the wiring harness for the engine bay I had to redo. I pulled it all out, took all of the sheathing off of the wiring harness, and then rerouted each one individually where it needed to go, and then rewrapped it. So some of the wires got longer, some of them got shorter. It's not difficult work, but it's annoying work. So I found this sheathing that I really like the look of it. It seems period correct in my mind, and it was fairly easy to do. So yeah, the MAF used to be over here, and it went through that section of the harness. You pull it back through the dash, and you run it around. So a little bit of labor there, but these wheels are the Aventi Storm S1s. I love these wheels because they come the color of brake dust, so you never have to wash them. These tires are Dureza DZ102s. As all you know as Miata people, Miatas like to cup tires because they run, we were running an aggressive camber setup on them. So these tires I've found to be the best in terms of again, for an around town car, not a track car. Decent amount of grip, good in the water, they go a long time without cupping, and they're decently quiet. So I keep buying these ones because it's kind of hard to find one for a car this size that doesn't give you the 65 mile an hour shimmy and have a bunch of issues. High compression build. We've not done a so short nose crank versus long nose crank. We've not done a high compression build on a 1.6 yet, mostly because it's not worth it. The heads just don't flow good enough to make any noticeable power, and if you're going to go through all that work, an extra $200 to start with a BP4W just makes all the sense in the world. The high compression build, it depends how we wanted to do it. The one that we did on the 99, we're going to go back in again and keep playing with it. The goal for that car is 200 horsepower to the tires naturally aspirated, so we got to do a bunch more head work, but we could run a more or less stock bottom end. We wouldn't have to put the H-beam rods and all that, but you're looking at probably $4,000 to $5,000 depending on how crazy you wanted to get with it. If you were just rebuilding, if you wanted to do a high compression 1.6, which we could do, the long nose crank conversion is not too bad. A couple $100 usually to find a good crankshaft, and the rest of the timing pieces that have to get switched over we steal from a 1.8, so it's relatively cost effective. We've done that before. Yeah, the NA build is getting bigger and better as we keep going. We've been playing with the getting the Hoosiers to fit on it and building our own splitters and wings, and we do have CAD modeling software that has fluid dynamic simulation in it, so we want to design all of our own aero and our own wings and stuff, and we've been playing with our virtual wind tunnel on that. Yeah, so the Bs very easily go with this air intake thing. The problem with the NAs is that the headlight comes out to here, and then there's a motor sitting next to it, and the intake actually sticks out further. So I tried for the life of me to get this to work on the black car we did, and it was not possible. I eventually welded up my own custom 180 that had to do a slight kink in it, that went down and around and came up, and I was able to park the filter in that corner. It wasn't as clean, but it did get it away from the exhaust side. But yeah, I know why they ran it over there in the first car. There was just nowhere else to put it, and if you look at the 1.6s, the throttle actually turns down slightly, making it even harder to fit. So yeah, as a carryover, they kept just sticking it on that side. But this is such a cheap fix for the Bs. I mean, this is like a $12 elbow from Summit. The air temperature sensor is just plugged into the bottom of it. Drill a hole, put a grommet in there, and boom. So yeah, I would do that on every NB I ever got. Yeah, we could do just a forged short block. When we do full motors, we get to do a full warranty because we are guaranteeing that it will start. When we do just a short block, obviously there's a huge potential that the end user could assemble something incorrectly, so our warranty is a bit different on those. But yes, we could certainly build you a forged bottom end. Yeah, the intake is Summit Racing. It's a Mishimoto, I think is the brand. $12 elbow. It's slightly too small for this because this piece and the throttle are not the same diameter. It's slightly too small for this and ever so slightly too large for this. You heat it up a little bit, you can get it on there and it looks fine, and then just tighten that down. That genuinely is the only piece. 2 hose clamps and a piece of pipe. Everything else is just cutting it to length and then finding a filter that fits over the end of the MAF. Dun, dun, dun. So, so the engine bay is nearly done. I did order that trim piece that people get to cover this up. They got to finish the washer fluid bottle, but then we're going to call that engine bay done for this year. We'll come back to it once it's got some miles on it, and once it gets older and I can justify pulling it out. It's a perfectly running motor. I went ahead and reshimmed all the lifters, did the timing, all that stuff. So it's a brand new engine, so I feel bad taking it apart this young in its career. I gotta add a chin strap and some stuff to it here. I don't know, I always used to like the NB2s after owning this and staring at them for a long time, and a customer conveniently brought in a silver NB2 that I got to park next to this. I've fallen more in love with the NB1s with the headlights and whatnot. They're not as aggressive to start with, but I feel like they're going to age better. And they have the motor that I like in them, so that helps justify my position. Yeah, so this car is going to start getting all of the hand-me-down parts from the black race car. So it's going to get the coilovers and the suspension from it. I keep saying I'm not going to autocross this car. I'm sure I'm going to end up doing it. I am incapable of helping myself. So we'll run into street touring with it locally and just have some fun. All right, what else do we got here? Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some research. I keep going back thinking about the all-motor 1.6. So the 1.6 engine, I guess I could run through my philosophy on the Miata motors. The 1.6 has some positive attributes. It's 2 inches shorter than a 1.8, and it weighs quite a bit less. And in particular, what weighs less is the crankshaft. So it is able to spin substantially faster in terms of acceleration. So a 1.6 with a lightweight flywheel on it, and a well-balanced bottom end, you could just zip that sucker up to whatever RPM you like. So it's never going to make more power than a 1.8, but that's not the point most of the time. Again, it's about the driving experience. You could make a really fun little zippy car with a 1.8 in it. Yeah, I said I was going to keep it. This is stock in my mind. This is as stock as a car I'm going to own is ever going to be. It has the same horsepower it had when it was new, so therefore it's stock in my mind. The 94 to 97 motors are my least favorite. The 99 to 00 BP4Ws are my personal favorite. I really like not having hydraulic lifters. The valve train is simpler. I like the 2-piece intake manifold. The whole motor is easier to work on. And then the next one up, the VVT engines, it's the same motor with VVT. If you're building an all motor, the VVT is nice. If you're building boosted, it's an added complexity. If you're putting it back in the car that it came out of, it's not a huge deal. If you're engine swapping it, it's a real pain to work out the VVT software. So I would avoid it at that point. I like to remove moving pieces. Moving pieces tend to break. So the BP4Ws has the fewest number of moving parts inside of the engine, so it's the simplest mechanically. So that's why it's my favorite. I like mechanically simple. All right, let's see here. Oh yeah, yes, I kept the factory exhaust. And everyone's been commenting of, oh, we got to put tubes on it, Long tube headers are allowed. We've noticed this, especially on the race car. Once you throw a boost through it, that really thin-walled stainless tubing does not hide noises very well. There's a reason that most OEM vehicles use cast exhaust manifolds, and that's because they're very, very quiet. So again, this car being designed for the sensation of driving, I want to hear the noise coming out of the exhaust. I don't want to hear the noise coming out of the engine. So we're going to keep the factory header on it. I know I'm zapping power with it, but it makes the sensation of driving more fun to me, which was the goal. So there we go. So, yep. Yeah, so back to my radio. I like this radio. This is fun. So in here, we have the a USB aux, all of your inputs. I can plug my phone in, just drop it in that box, and then I get GPS and music and all that fun stuff. Running a 01 to 03. Oh, yeah. There's minor differeses, but essentially 94 to 05, the bottom ends are identical. You can head swap to your heart's content. They had different pistons depending on what year that were very, very mildly changing the compression ratio, and there's some minuscule differences on the bosses and the castings on the outside of the block. But for all intents and purposes, you can grab any bottom end from 94 to 05 and build it the same way, and stick a 9900 head on it. That's what we did on the 66. It's got a 96 bottom end, or block, basically. The rest of it's aftermarket, and then a 99 head. So yes, you can definitely do that. Basically, 94 to 05 they're completely interchangeable front to back. So you can switch them around. We did look into removing the VVT from a VVT head and determined it just is too difficult. And the reason is because they had to get hydraulic pressure to the cam gear anyway, they borrow the pressure from the front camshaft bearing. And deleting that, when you delete it, you wind up starving that front bearing of oil. So it would take a ton of machining to correct that head. And currently, BP4W heads are still relatively cheap and easy to come by. If you're talking about just head swapping, yes, you could take a bone stock 01 to 05 bottom end and stick a 99 head on it. Now, I don't know why you would do that unless you're found the bottom end from one car, the head from another car, and you're sticking them into a third car. But yes, you can do that. All right, I'll stop vibrating now. All right, we'll do a couple more and we'll call it a night. Anyone got anything else they want to ask? And we will wrap it up. What's everybody got and what are they building? That's one thing I wanted to say though. I want to keep doing new stuff that no one's done before. So whoever's got a really crazy idea, I want to hear about it and see if we can do it. I will give a spoiler. We are building a twin turbo Miata for someone's very soon here. Not to make 1 billion horsepower, just so they can open up the hood and see something that's cooler than anything else at the car show. And we're going to wind up having to detune it so it doesn't blow its transmission out, but we're going to build our own exhaust manifold and intake system that is just a really slick thing to look at. I really like making stuff look pretty. I appreciate something that just functions well, but I appreciate it more when it was also done in a way that's very beautiful and pleasing to look at. No, not sequential. It'll be parallel. So 1 and 3 and 2 and 4 each get their own turbo. And we're going to find the smallest turbos we can and just coil them up there nice and pretty. So the wire tuck that I did on this car, we didn't delete anything. The car has no idea I changed anything. I just relocated all of the emissions junk. There's a lot of space under the car, especially on the early ones. There's huge cavities back by the gas tank. You can relocate the evap canister and all that stuff to near the tank. On the race car, we did just delete it because we're running an aftermarket ECU. The only reason not to delete all that stuff is if you have to pass emissions. These cars are not using that for anything important, and the delete is very easy. The computer doesn't even really know you took it away, and if you're running a standalone, you program it out. It's not an issue. In terms of what the cost would be to do a wire tuck and paint and all that, it depends on how crazy you want to go with it, and what method you want to using. If you want to keep everything still intact so that it's running on the factory computer, or we're doing a standalone. Figure start at probably around $500 and go up to sky's the limit. Depends how crazy you want to get. Some of the powders that I chose here, we had to do 2 or 3 times to get them right because they were really, really, really tricky to do. Yeah, if you're going to a Mega Squirt, piece of cake. We just delete everything. Lickety split, all done. And the easiest way to delete that stuff, well, we remove all of it, and the computer doesn't know any difference. Once you're running a Mega Squirt, if you do it the way we did it, you no longer have access to the OBD2. You plug in through the port on the Mega Squirt. So we remove the check engine light from the dash because it doesn't... On the earlier Miatas, the only things that the check engine light can come on for are pretty much emissions-related stuff. It doesn't know anything else that's going on, so you could have a hole through a piston, it has no idea. Valve covers start at about $100, and wheels start about $100 a wheel. It's very, very much color dependent and dependent on the condition of the piece of metal we're starting with. So to powder coat, if it's got paint on it already, we have to acid bath it to take all of the chemicals off before we can get a good coat on it. And some colors go on very, very easily, and some colors, like the purple car we did that has the gold valve cover, that was a 2-coat. We actually had to powder coat the valve cover chrome and then powder coated over the chrome with a translucent bronze to get that gold to pop and give it the depth. Whereas like the green on this one was a piece of cake. It was 1 coat, 1 and done. Blacks, most of the time any solid color is very cheap. Wrinkles are very easy to do. We could powder coat the wheels chrome, yeah. We can't, it would be powder coat chrome, not chrome. So it looks slightly different, but it'd be a lot cheaper than actually chroming them. Yeah, any textured powder, weirdly enough, is very cheap to do. So black and red wrinkles. We did one, if you go on our Facebook page, you can find it. That's got, it's called Silver Artery, but it's basically a hammered metal look. That's really easy to do. The colors that are the hardest to do are the candies and the metallics, because those are multi-step processes we have to mix, and it takes some time to do. When it comes to the engine stuff, like if we're already building an engine for you, it's very, very cheap to add in some of the cosmetic stuff because the engine's already out apart and had to be pressure washed and cleaned anyway. And it's easier to do it at that time than to go back in later and try and get to it. Yeah, we can definitely do the wheels. Depends on what color you want to go with. And you can do some stuff with powders that you can't do with paint. So there's some really cool finishes you can get. But it's a completely different process. So what's easy with paint is not what's easy with powder. It's very bizarre. But the biggest thing with doing, you have to get all of the grease off of the wheels. So our process is first we acid bath them. Then we do what we call an outgassing, which is where we bake them at 450 degrees for an hour to verify that no oil is left on the surface, because any oil that's left will immediately ruin the powder. All right, one more and we'll call it a night here. You guys want to do this again? I can pick a different vehicle next time. We can do another vehicle. We can do the black car. I got 2 other ones that we just finished in the shop right now that are pretty cool vehicles to look at. So I can do, if this is fun and we like it, I can set this up again and pick another vehicle. Oh, I will say this. These just came in the mail today. I'm a Pioneer guy, and these are new to me at least. I don't know if they're new. I like these. These sound really, really good. These are the TS-A652F 3-ways. They're not expensive. I got these off of Amazon. I like these speakers. They sound really good. I've been having a harder time finding quality 3-ways recently. I remember I used to, at least in my head, I used to be able to buy these all the time in the issue. Now everything's gone to a 2-way or a component. But the Miatas, these things work phenomenal. So I got 4 of these for this car. Well, 4 of these and 2 of the kickers in there. This is going to be a rockin' sound system. I'm very excited about this. I feel like I missed something. Turbo, I am not the foremost authority on turbos. We'll start with that. I'm definitely a supercharger guy. I know just enough about selecting the right turbo to be dangerous. If you're going all in and you want something really good, definitely call up the turbo manufacturers and get some advice on them for your application. Because turbos affect how a car drives tremendously. When does the boost come on? How much does it make? What's the torque curve on it? There's a lot of black magic going on in there that I don't understand yet. Superchargers is nice and simple math in my mind to figure out and to get it to be tuned correctly. What I like to do with the turbos is make my own system from scratch that works using an OEM turbo. So yes, you can go to Garrett or Precision and spend $2,000 on a turbo, or you can go get the turbo off of a Subaru that Subaru spent how many millions of dollars developing and making work for 100,000 miles, and people are removing and selling on eBay for $150. And then when it breaks, you can get another one for $150. And if you did want to go to an aftermarket at some point, you could get one that bolts right in because it's from a Subaru. So Precision makes a turbo designed to bolt onto a Subaru. So like, for example, for this twin turbo build we're doing, we're going to use a pair of TD04s because they're cheap, and they're small, and they make good power, and they're known to be reliable. When you start getting to where you're pushing the limits of how much horsepower you can make, now you need to go get a actually engineered turbo for the job. With a Miata, you will start breaking the drivetrain long before you reach that point. So yes, if you have a car that has a fully replaced transmission and rear end and you're drag racing or whatever, yeah, I'm lost at that point. We need to call up Garrett or Borg Warner and get an exact turbo for the application. You can do a turbo kit. In my opinion, all of the kits I've seen are ridiculously overpriced, but I am biased because I'm used to being able to make anything that I can envision really quickly. So if you don't have access to a welder and a CNC machine and all that, then maybe they're not overpriced. But my big pet peeve is all of the kits I've ever seen are ugly to look at. And again, I get really hung up on making something that is visually beautiful, not just functions well. But so if you do want to turbo, I'd say back up and define what your needs are. If you're racing, let's look at the math and see if a turbo is actually the right tool for the job. If you just want a turbo for the noises and the fun and all that, at that point it doesn't matter. You're not going to maximize your system. You're just wanting to make something that's a pleasurable experience to drive, which is phenomenal. Let's build one that also looks really good. And we don't need to have the best of the best turbo. You just one that makes a decent amount of power and makes all the turbo noises that we like. So that's my rant on turbos. Dun-dun-dun. Make a full kit with a bracket and intake manifold, etc., to fit an OEM supercharger on Miatas. There are not a lot of OEM superchargers out there. Turbos are fuel efficient, so modern cars are using them. All the EcoBoost and whatever Chevy's equivalent of that, or Ford's, I don't remember. All of those eco cars are using turbos because they're fuel efficient. Superchargers are anti-fuel efficient. So you got like the Mini Coopers, the Cobalt SS. Those are the only two that I know of offhand that used a blower that was sized correctly for this motor. So while you can get a blower from a 5-liter Mustang for free, it's completely the wrong size and will not work well on it. You know, it has to be scaled correctly. So as for blowers, I'm running the Rotrex on the 66. I like the centrifugal supercharger because it doesn't weigh anything. We doubled the horsepower of the car and added a total of 50 pounds to the entire vehicle, which is phenomenal. Then we removed the air conditioning system and now we're back to zero. Alternatively, you can do like Fast Forward makes a screw style supercharger. Or if you have lots of money, you can get an Edelbrock or an Eaton or something, but you're spending $6 to $8 on that kit at that point. Yeah, if there was a good aftermarket supercharger that we could readily get that was sized correctly for a 1.8 car, we would definitely make a kit for it. Like the M60, MP60 blowers, they only make like 6 to 8 pounds of boost on a 1.6. They're just too small. An M45, yeah, it makes 6 pounds of boost on a 1.6 liter motor. If you stuck that on our race car, it'd make like 5 pounds of boost, it's not enough power for the amount of effort and weight that type of a blower adds. So it's just not big enough, unfortunately. So yeah, I've become an advocate of the Rotrex system because I'm making 15 pounds of boost and it doesn't weigh anything. And it's linear power, and again, I'm a little slightly biased, I'm a racer. It's very usable, driver-friendly power. It does not get all the looks at the car shows, it doesn't make all of the cool noises, it's just really good, usable power, so. And it doesn't make the squealy noises, the whine, so. It's no good for showing off with. But yeah, I do like superchargers. I like the way they drive. So turbos are good. Most of the Miatas that we see come in, people put too big of a turbo, being slightly over ambitious, and you get nothing until 4,000 RPM, and then you get everything after 4,000 RPM, and it's hilarious, but completely useless in terms of actually going somewhere with it. But again, it's all about what you want to do with the car. So if the goal of the car is to just be your favorite driving experience, then it's completely fine. It's just a matter of what you find enjoyable to you. Yes, Zach knows about too much turbo. So when I set out to build the ultimate Miata for my personal driving pleasure, I don't really want a lot of power. It's about the swiftness and the worry-freeness. That's what sold the Miata initially. It was reliable. So I'm really sold on these all-motor builds where we just bump the compression up a little bit, clean the head, put in some larger valves, just pick up the horsepower a little bit just to give you a little kick, but don't remove any of the reliability that came with it. 2550. What is that? Is that the liters? What unit is that? Or is that a model number I'm not familiar with? I'm curious if someone knows of a supercharger that's relatively cheap off an older OEM car that we could use. Oh, for turbo, I do not know. I would have to look that up. Again, I'm not real read up on on turbos. There's like 6 or 7 variables to a turbo, and people dull it down to just impeller size. But there's the rake of the impeller, the ratio between the inlet and the outlet, your compressor size, and there's another term I'm forgetting. It's a very complicated. All of those numbers need to line up to have if you're going to maximize your turbo. There is one company that I know of making an aftermarket cam. I am going to start looking into that very aggressively next winter because we're going to be pulling the head off of the 66 and doing bigger valves and bigger camshafts. I know there's one out there that's relatively cheap and everyone uses it. I've not tried this yet, but the whole intake exhaust cam swap is very popular on the stock motors. Make sure I get this. I might be backwards, but the intake cam is bigger than the exhaust cam, and so a lot of people will run 2 intake cams on their motor to bump it up, which is a very, very cheap upgrade. Biggest money wasting mods: strut tower brace, because the car doesn't have struts. Let's see. Cold air intake. Basically, most of the time, if you don't have a standalone ECU and are able to retune the car, any of the bolt-ons, except for exhaust, the exhaust does do quite a bit, are not worth a huge amount. People will make very long, lengthy intake runners to try and get cold air, and they're trading cold air for length and restriction. And you can't. Yes, you might be able to put it on the dyno and find 1 horsepower, but it's not worth it. 1 horsepower is not worth a whole lot. The VMAX coilovers. We've had several cars come in now with the VMAXs on them, and I do not like those as a shock absorber, especially for what they're charging. If it was $200 or $300, it'd be fine, but I do not like the way they handle. I do not like the way they ride. I'm anti VMAX. Yeah, that's all I can think of. The strut tower brace is the one that gets me most of the time when people come in with that. The exhaust on a stock Miata is incredibly restrictive, so that's definitely a worthy upgrade, all of it. You need long tube headers, delete the cat or a high flow cat, and then a better muffler in the back. Picks up a noticeable difference with the way the car drives. This motor is essentially the same motor we have in the black car, and I noticed in this one that it gets to about 6K. This is a full stock exhaust on it right now still. It gets to about 6K and it just doesn't want to keep going, where the black car just keeps revving till it runs out. If you do not change anything in the engine, no power gain for just switching to a Mega Squirt. As soon as you do switch, though, there's some stuff you can fiddle with and get gains. And there's some stuff, Ken, you can do in class as well. There's some minor tweaks we're allowed to play with ignition timing. Once you have a standalone ECU, we can put adjustable cam gears on there. We can fudge the timing front to back, and we can pick up a little bit. And you're really not picking up top end power as much as you're moving your power band to the RPM range where you can use it, which is the same thing we do when we bump the ignition timing on the NAs. You know, you rotate the cam sensor on the back of the head. You're not gaining power. You're just moving the power band down so it's somewhere where you can access it. So it's the same stuff that they started doing when they added the variable valve timing and all that. We can, if we're racing the car, we can set it up and say, hey, I'm only ever in this RPM range. We can fine tune it to maximize it in that range. Yeah, and then we can add more fuel and stuff. I need to look at the rules to see what all we're allowed to do in street touring and how much cheating is acceptable in terms of massaging the cylinder head a little bit to get more out of it. All right. I have no idea what time it is, but I did not do a coolant reroute on the silver car. I got lazy. VTEC and variable valve timing are the same thing. VTEC is just Honda's branded name for variable valve timing. And it simply means that at a set RPM, the cams shift to give you a different valve timing. Now, we could mechanically force that if you're always in that higher RPM range anyway, and voila, you're just stuck in VTEC, basically. All right, I will set up another one of these at some point here, and we'll do it at the shop next time when we have access to all the cars. Maybe we'll do one later this week. So if anyone has suggestions or something they want specifically covered, let me know, and we'll be sure to get that arranged. Yep, and feel free to ask me anything. Meister R Sport. Yeah, I like the Meister R's. We did those on an ND. I've not tried them on an A yet, but we did them on an ND, and it was phenomenal. That was the fastest car, best handling car we've ever driven. Yeah, I did like those a lot. Okay, I will see you guys next time. If anyone has ideas of what they want, let me know. Maybe we'll do one of these later in the week. Farewell.